This is the session for engaging students in peer-to-peer tobacco treatment outreach. And so with that, I am glad to have Rand Davis from UC Davis and Natalie Marcus from University of San Francisco. I'll let the two of you kind of introduce yourselves and take full lead. I do want to remind everybody that you can put questions in the chat at any time, and I will help to moderate at the part of the Q&A. The session is being recorded and everything will be sent out hopefully next week, as long as all of our files get pulled together correctly. And so you all will have this content after the fact. All right, I pass it to you.
Thanks. I'll introduce myself really quick and then let Natalie introduce herself, and we can get started from there. So I'm Rayanne Davis. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a health promotion specialist at UC Davis within our student health and counseling services. Thanks all for being here.
Thanks. And yeah, I'm Natalie Macias from the University of San Francisco, Director of Health Promotion Services under Student Life. And I've been here for a little over 5 years. I'm happy to be here as well.
Thanks, Natalie. All right, so we'll get going. I'm excited that it looks like our two programs complement each other well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Mine is a little more focused on like an ambassador program. So the students do they learn about motivational interviewing and they do some referral to resource. And it sounds like Natalie's students do some of that as well as some of the ambassador work around campus. So without further ado, I already introduced myself. So I'm going to be talking about engaging students in our smoke and tobacco-free efforts. It's going to be really quick. I think we're each just speaking for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. I'll do a brief background kind of what the policy looks like on our campus, talk about the program, and then just mention some other student engagement activities that we do very briefly towards the end. So our smoking rate, as I'm sure many of you have seen similar trends, of conventional cigarettes has been going down. I don't have 2013 on here, but 2013 was actually 7 point something percent. So then down to 5, and in 2019, 4.1%. Whereas on the flip side, e-cigarettes are increasing. So this is over a 200% increase within 2 years. And I'm a little anxious to see what the 2021 results reveal. As far as our campus climate, we introduced our policy in 2014. The policy acceptance was very extreme. People either loved it and were super supportive or were very angry. We got a lot of really angry emails and references to Nazi Germany, and people couldn't believe that we were taking away the right to smoke. So with that being said, enforcement has been a struggle. I'm sure lots of people can relate, and it's not something that we've been able to do on our campus despite pretty wide campus support for it. So when we do our campus-wide surveys over the years, every time it comes out that the majority of folks do support some sort of non-punitive enforcement. However, our student judicial affairs and our police departments and even our peers have been unwilling to want to take that role, which it's very hard to blame them. So one of the things we did to kind of address those issues is our ambassador program. So it was volunteer, but they did receive transcript notation, which is just a notation on their transcript that says they participated in this internship. There was a quarter or two or a year or two where we were able to do stipends, which was really nice. Came out of our health education and promotion budget. And then I think 1 year we were able to offer units, which is pretty cool. So the position description was the majority of it was just that students would be going out on campus and interacting with tobacco users. With a little bit of outreach. That's how it started. It did kind of morph into something different in the end, which I'll talk about in 2 or 3 slides. But we did an application and interviews, and we felt that this really helped build investment in the students. Once they'd gone through that process and been accepted, we were likely to retain them. And each year there were about 5 to 8 students and 2 staff members who were leading the program. So we had a tradition of taking jumping photos. So my 5 slides have 1 jumping photo each for the 5 years that we done the program. The structure, we had weekly meetings, And within those meetings, they learned about motivational interviewing. They did teach backs where we would have like another student come in and kind of role play being the tobacco user so that the students were able to practice their motivational interviewing skills. We had a lot of guest speakers. So some folks from CYAN came in. We'd have a former smoker came in. That was always the most popular session, was when someone came in and talked about their experience quitting tobacco. And then of course a cheat sheet with all the really common things that they would encounter on their campus rounds, which would include why aren't there designated smoking areas? The most popular one was I'm not bothering anyone. That came up a lot. So that's kind of what their training looked like. We did a social justice training, some environmental training. So they kind of got a large scope, but the majority was really that interaction piece with peers on campus. They did 4 hours a week. And then, yes, there were some secondary activities, which included scans, pickup days, things like that. Oops, I went too far ahead. So as far as results and outcomes, we did something called rounds reports where they would record the length of the interaction that they had with the tobacco user, whether it was in their view, whether it was positive, negative, neutral, and what resources they were able to refer students to. And what I will say is that when we first did this in 2015, we had quite a few interactions. And then every year thereafter, it started to be really tough for students to even find tobacco users on campus. So this program did change into more of an outreach program until now, as of last year, we stopped doing the rounds entirely with the ambassador program, but it did serve a really great purpose for the 5 years that we did it. But we saw less and less tobacco litter as well as less interactions. So, I mean, I think that's good news. I do miss a lot of the aspects of the program, but that's kind of where it went. And then I'll just briefly mention the scans. They would go count cigarettes within a hotspot, or litter, I should say, because there's also vape litter. And then 48 hours later, after they'd clean it all up, they'd go back. So that gave us a snapshot of how much litter accumulated within a 48-hour period in one spot. And over the years, that started dwindling as well. In year one, it was like 1,000. In 2 days, we'd see 1,000 cigarette butts, whereas now sometimes it's like 11. So a lot less litter on campus. So we think the benefits of this program is that it's peer-to-peer, obviously. They really love that. The students who we get are super passionate about this, which of course it takes a special student who's really invested and wants to do this sort of work. It can be tailored to a school's specific needs as far as what they want out of the students. It definitely put more of a positive face on the policy because these students, even though you'd think that there would be a lot of negative interactions, the vast majority of their interactions were positive, which is awesome. And then also the student passion and energy, they would come up with a lot of projects on their own, and we try to give them some freedom to do what they wanted to do with the internship as well. As far as challenges, the students did not like being seen as kind of the enforcers. And then this we already talked about, but through the years, there was a low number of tobacco users during rounds. So there was less of a need for that. And then, yeah, the expectations versus reality. I think they thought they'd be out there having these nice long conversations with smokers, using their motivational interviewing skills, whereas a lot of the interactions were just very short. And even if they were able to do a refer to resources, they didn't get to really use their passion as much as they wanted to. So I'll just share 2 quotes before we kind of conclude. What I loved most about this experience was being able to engage one-on-one with fellow peers at the university. I definitely felt like it made a positive impact on the community. So that's someone who in the beginning really got to actually speak with their peers. And then this one talks more about education on how the industry targets marginalized groups, the effects on the environment, and it more so speaks about the outreach, and that's kind of where the program ended up, as they do more outreach and education in the more recent years. I think I'm running out of time, but I'll just quickly say we do have paid student assistants that work with health education and promotion that work on a variety of smoke and tobacco-free initiatives and cessation programs. We've used paid Masters in Public Health practicum students the last, I think, 3 years, which has been awesome. Sometimes we've used paid research students, and then we have health promotion and education volunteers. Sorry, stumbled over my words there, but lastly, I did put contacts on here just since I'm not the only one who does the work on my campus, and if questions come up that I'm unable to answer, I wanted to have these other 2 contacts on here for folks to contact if needed. So with that, I thank you, and I will pass it to Natalie before we open up for questions. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Awesome, Rayanne. All right. Fantastic. Okay. And I can see some of you, which is awesome. All right. So to dovetail what Rayanne was talking about, we also have a peer-to-peer tobacco outreach program for our students here at the University of San Francisco. And just a little bit about USF. So we're a private Jesuit university. We're, 4 years of probably much smaller than UC Davis, approximately 10 to 11,000 students on our campus. And just kind of a brief quick history of like where we were and how we got to where we are now. And so for us to go 100% smoke and tobacco free, it was a very long journey. Some of you might be in the middle in that journey right now, and just be patient, and it will happen. And so we did have a lot of support from leadership, and that was, I think, the tipping point for us as well in regards to the president deciding to go tobacco and smoke free August 2017. And so that was a great big move for us. And we also at that time were able to get a huge grant from the tobacco free generation grant, about $20,000. And so that was a really big impetus to also have our campus go tobacco free. And so with that, we started a smoke and tobacco free ambassador program. And kind of just like Rayanne was saying, it was more or less a new program for our students. And we kind of wanted to do both outreach and also one-on-one smoking cessation. And so the students not only did conducted rounds around campus, and again, using their motivational interviewing skills and how to, approach someone empathetically and things like that. They also did one-on-one sessions to talk with students who might be interested in quitting tobacco. And we also, of course, when we were in person, they would also help conduct cigarette butt litter cleanup, as well as data collection with those things. And we hired around 2 to 4 students with the grant that we received. And so they were paid. And we, again, just like at UC Davis, they were interviewed by myself and someone else in our department. And it was offered to both graduate, undergraduate, domestic, or international students who wanted to participate in a peer-to-peer program like this. And so the training, so we actually did the training, the NASPA training. So they were certified peer educators. And so within that training, there was brief motivational interviewing, a lot of role playing and that sort of thing, as well as we required them to do the CYA COF certification. Again, if some of them weren't really familiar about tobacco use, techniques and that sort of thing, we made sure that they got that certificate of completion. And again, like I mentioned, a lot of role-playing scenarios as well. And then we also really touched upon 3 different approaches. The AIR approach, maybe some of you are familiar with that. So, approaching an individual, informing them and referring them if they are smoking, resources that we do have on campus. Another approach that we have that was actually started over at San Francisco State was the scale of openness to education, awareness, and referral. And it was developed to have these conversations with tobacco and nicotine users. And it's really based on nonverbal cues. So when a student would see maybe a smoker or 2, they would kind of take a view of them and see if how open they were they, had their ear pods in, kind of just doing their own thing, etc. And so were they comfortable enough? And so it works on a scale of 0 to 10. And so the idea is if someone you approach is on like a 3, if you will, and it's kind of open to having a conversation, you want to get them to maybe a 0 or a 1, and then refer them to a resource on campus. And then another one is the 5 A's, and we really use this one when our ambassadors, our trainers, were doing one-on-one. So they would, have those one-on-ones with a tobacco user or student, address, assess, and help advise them, help them find those goals or things that they're trying to do to combat tobacco use, and assist them. And again, I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk about the stages of change theory. And again, really allowing the student, when they do have those one-on-ones, to meet them where they're at. Again, really focusing on like giving that person the autonomy of where they want to go, when do they want to quit, and the way that they want to be treated, whether they want to go cold turkey, whether they want to use, a mobile app to help assist them, Nicorette gum, lozenges, that sort of thing. So really talking with the student about their journey in regard to quitting tobacco. And so when our students would be, having one-on-one sessions, again, now they're in Zoom. So we still are offering one-on-one sessions for students, and they could attend and schedule as many as they want. It doesn't matter. We don't have a limit. We offer free Nicorette gum and lozenges to students. And so if the student chooses to go that way, they'll meet with our peer educators, the ambassadors. And then if they, like I said, if they choose to go that way, the student will meet with me next. So then we can discuss how to, the type of treatment that they want. And then we'll mail out, because again, we're not in person, we'll mail out that stuff to that student's address. And then we also offer a free Quit app for up to 1 year. So it's a mobile app that uses motivational interviewing as well. And so through our grant, we actually purchased 200 licenses to this app, so we can offer it to any student. And so they have the pro version, or the paid version, and our department takes on that cost. Again, so they have a multitude of ways to, combat their tobacco use. And again, this is still offered to all of our students, even while we're being remote. And so, like my colleague was mentioning, we've had to pivot in regards to our outreach when when we're offering these services to our students and anybody on campus. So again, through newsletters, through emails, et cetera, social media, they're still doing virtual workshops and one-on-ones, like I mentioned. And we actually just started a new collaboration with our public health department. And so these graduate students have really taken the lead in regards to this outreach approach to making sure that students who choose to or want to quit tobacco, that these resources are available still on our campus. And just kind of an idea, and I didn't put any of our data in here, but we're all seeing the trends of, students not smoking traditional cigarettes anymore. We're seeing an uptick in e-cigarettes and things like that. And so our educators have really kind of done a 180 in regards to the material and education. So they're really focusing on e-cigarettes. And so the name of this workshop is Nip It in the Pod. And again, really engaging students from virtually has been a challenge, like we've all noticed. And so really trying to engage them. Their presentations are no more than 30 minutes, and incorporating quizzes, breakout rooms, trivia. And these are going to be ongoing. And we have 3 standing each semester, so each fall and each spring semester. And then just, again, the Great American Smokeout, again, we had to pivot. As you can see, we have, like 7 little mini activities throughout the entire Great American Smokeout, because it's unfair and not right to have someone sitting in front of a screen for, an hour to talk about the Great American Smokeout, resources and things like that. So again, trying to have a really fun and engaging way in the current climate that we're all in. And one thing that Rianne mentioned is testimonials. I think what we've learned is students really enjoy that, hearing from a peer and regarding their quit journey and things like that. And that's something we will continue to do throughout the next semester. And it was really well received by our students. And it was actually really, really great to hear the feedback from students about that. And so, able to relate to their peer in that regard. And again, just some other outreach, some ideas regarding, like I said, the pivot to, virtual and things like that with this program specifically. So our ambassadors has done a really great job to try and, make everything virtual and accessible to our students still this last year. And just, some challenges. I mean, it's how do we pivot to this new virtual world and stay engaged and reinventing ourselves. I think for my department and other departments, it's going to be a constant challenge. Zoom fatigue is real. But on the other side, we're doing a lot more cross collaboration with other departments. And again, student involvement is key to that. And we really allow our students to take autonomy and, share ideas and, why not? Let's try it. You never know if it's going to work. And again, and continually offering those resources for students so that, the Nicorette gum and lozenges, will mail it to their house or wherever they're living. Again, we want to make sure that they have those things available to them. And giveaways are always a plus. Any little knickknacks that, your office can, spare and things like that. That's always great to garner support and things like that for workshops and other events that our students plan. Yeah, and so feel free to reach out to me with any follow-up questions or anything like that. Happy to hear and share ideas and things that we're doing here on our campus. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing some about your program. And I want to open it up to everybody to start providing. We were hoping for this one to be a pretty good conversation back and forth to really hear from all of you of what it is that you'd like to kind of learn about and questions that you have. So I encourage you, if you want to put questions in chat, feel free to do so with that. If you want to either raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask questions as well. I highly encourage you to do that as well. We want to be able to have this be a nice back and forth conversation.
I was going to say, I like the way you talked about how a non-smoker, used to smoke and then how they help other people stop smoking. I think that testimony I like that. I never thought about something like that. I'm working on campus on mine, but I think that's a great way to go, because your testimony could help somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just my 2 little cents is, that's something that you really, should talk to the student and, make sure that they feel comfortable and you have that kind of relationship. And if they're willing to, have an open conversation with other, active smokers who are trying to quit. But yeah, we did it actually through the Great American Smoke Out, and that was the first time. And the feedback that we got from students who participated, that was honestly beyond like the quizzes and Jeopardy. That was the best part of that event that they hosted and what they enjoyed the most. So yeah, I mean, if you have a previous smoker who's willing and able, I think students can really grab onto that and see themselves in that person, be like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, me being a previous smoker, my whole family smoked. It was hard for me because when I tried to quit, they still smoking. So finally, I had to, because of my health, because of asthma, I had finally told them to go outside and stop smoking. And when it happened in the wintertime, they didn't want to go outside and smoke. They finally quit. So it was kind of what I had to do to my family to help out. But yeah, being a smoker, I stopped smoking like 20 years ago, so I could do that. I would like to do that to my students and do testimony. I think that's really good for the other students who are trying to quit.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's a great idea to do from the recommendation. And I know that from what I've seen from other folks, a lot of times those testimonies are a big hit in our past events and such when we've been able to get folks to come in and share their testimonies of their experience as smokers. It's always been very informative. So I think they'll really get to latch with that. We did have a second question come up in the chat. So how do you get the resources to offer the free gum and lozenges? And do you offer free patches as well?
So our department actually takes on that cost. So we pay out of our student health clinic budget. And so we purchase both the gum and the lozenges. And again, before, if a student chooses to go that route, I meet with them after they meet with the ambassadors, our peer educators, and then I continue to talk to them and educate them about, the difference between each one, how you need to use it, etc. But we don't offer patches. The only thing is the gum and the lozenges. And again, so like I said, we take on that cost within our department.
And our campus is pretty similar as far as free gum and lozenge given by our intervention services coordinator. So she does the campus cessation. And if a student is meeting with her, they can get the free gum and lozenge, and it does come out of our budget. When we first passed our policy in 2014, CVS, I forget the exact time frame, but I think it was around a year. They actually partnered with us to offer free gum and lozenges, which was really cool. But then that ended, but they were a wonderful partner. And so that was no cost to us. And then lastly, we got a grant recently to be able to partner with the X program. And that's kind of a web-based online community of smokers trying to quit, as well as ex-smokers or tobacco users. And through their app, when someone signs up, they also send free NRT to the home of the participant. And I believe they do patches. But as far as what was given out via CVS for other free things or free NRT, it was just the gum and lozenges.
Awesome. We also have another question that came up regarding the scale 1 to 10 assessment prior to interactions. Was it the same ambassador to the same smoking student over a period of time?
I think if I'm hearing this correctly, so the scale of openness, the 1 through 10. So our peer educators were trained on this scale, and that approach was more when we were in person. So if they saw a smoker or a group of smokers at the perimeter of our campus, they would assess from a distance in regards to like seeing their nonverbals. And if the student or students seemed like they were amicable, approachable, they would start and approach them and have that open conversation first. And so, and then with opening up that conversation, if they soon realize that that student or students were maybe at a 7, which is maybe a little bit more, I don't want to use the word threatening, but a little bit more aggressive, the hope was through their training that they could eventually engage with the student with open-ended questions, just talk to them about their tobacco use, or maybe just even pivot and just talk to them about being a student. And then just, again, parlay with, oh, well, do you know about our policy here on campus? We don't, it's smoke and tobacco free. And so the idea was to get them from, i.e. like a 7, and get them down to maybe a 4 or 3, if possible. And again, those interactions, like Rand was saying, they're not, 10-minute conversations, but you can really pick up right away by someone's nonverbals if they really want to engage in a conversation or not. And if it's short in court, that's fine. Our ambassadors give them a resource card with our information about NRTs, as well as how to schedule an appointment, one-on-ones, if that's what they're interested in. But that was the approach in regards to the scale, the 1 to 10 scale of openness. And I could share that with you all after if you're more interested in that.
The scale of openness is definitely one of those ones that CYN is kind of, we have a training that we've been doing as well with that one. And I used to work at Sac State. So when I heard you mention Sac State and how you had kind of gotten that from them, it was brought me back to the old days.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one's definitely, like, if you're willing to share that out afterwards, I think that's a fantastic resource for anyone who's considering peer-to-peer work. We have another question that came in. I'm curious if all the peer-to-peer educators were paid or were some volunteer as well?
Ours were all volunteers for this specific program. We did offer one of the years, we offered a few stipends for them. I think it was, I'm embarrassed that I don't remember, but I think it was around maybe $300. So very, a small stipend. But the other students that we mentioned that work on some of the cessation resources, helping us with focus groups, helping us with scans, data collection, that sort of thing, some of those students are paid student coordinators, but they do other work. So this specific program where they were going out and speaking with tobacco users was primarily volunteers for our campus.
And then for our campus, we paid our students. So again, like I mentioned, it varied each year depending on our budget. So anywhere between 2 to 3, maybe 4 peer educators that we would have. And they would, they were paid minimum wage here in San Francisco, which was a little over $15. And they worked between 6 to 8 hours a week. And so, yeah, so they were paid.
Awesome, thank you. And for the school where they were volunteers, could you just talk a little bit to how you recruited and kind of what you used to motivate students to participate?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because when we first took on this undertaking, we were afraid of whether A, we would get anyone to apply, and B, whether we would be able to retain them. And I would say each year we lost on average 1. I don't know that we ever lost more than 1 student out of the 5 to 8 that we would get. But I will say that if we had 12 apply, we probably would have taken all 12. So that 5 to 8 number on a campus of 40,000 students is the amount that we got after trying to recruit on with all of our tricks. So we sent it out to listservs, we sent it out to health profession listservs and clubs, posted on social media for our health center and a few other social media channels. And I think what we mainly did was we'd post a student photo of an ambassador from a previous year with a quote about their experience, because we would do evaluations each quarter and they would just say these really awesome things about their experience. And then we would use that to then recruit the next year. As far as our first year, when we didn't have student experiences and quotes to use for recruitment, we would just usually say, like, are you interested in making a difference? Are you passionate about health and well-being, that sort of thing. And then I kind of mentioned this in my slides, but what we found really useful, even though we knew we were probably going to take all interested students, we still had them do an application and an interview, because we really felt that then they were more invested in the internship. And we did usually retain all of our volunteers. They usually stuck with it. And it doesn't hurt that we would sometimes bring snacks to meetings, or, they would get free t-shirts and swag. But I really like to think that the reason they stayed is that they all of them had a personal story of why they were there. They lost a family member to, lung cancer, or they had a sibling who started smoking really young, and something like that. All of them had that. And so they were all, really passionate and invested in staying.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll also add that we've heard from some other campuses that the way that they'll do with their engagement and getting their students involved is they'll work with certain departments to be able to offer it as like a minimum amount of units. And so students that are looking to try to get a little bit more on their schedule to qualify for student aid or anything like that, or to just be able to fulfill certain requirements, sometimes you can get those added in as what seems like a class, and then you just basically have the meetings function as the class period. And that tends to be a way to incentivize without having to have any kind of large costs as well. So I have a question on my list too, that I was wondering how you all are with the fact of like you've had to make all these changes during COVID, and you've had to kind of alter the way that you've worked with your students. And we're getting in that point now where we're starting to get cautiously optimistic that there's an out, like there's something that's gonna, like this is gonna end and we're gonna come back to being in person. I'm wondering if the two of you have kind of thought about how you might do things like with some of the things you've learned from COVID, from some of the things you've learned from your students and everything, and how you're looking at the campus environment a little bit different when reopening happens. Do you have any ideas at this point of like what that's going to look like for you, and how you're going to keep engaging your students and get them to be continually interested when campus reopens?
I mean, there's, that's kind of a loaded question in the sense of like, yeah, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I want to believe that everything's going to go back to normal, but we all know it's not. But just in other conversations and other programs that we have under our department, and just feedback that we got from our ambassadors and whatnot, that even when we go back to more in person, I think we, at least for our campus and things like that, when we do come back in person and we begin to continue this education about, you know, tobacco use, etc., and resources that we have to offer, one thing that they mentioned, and again, like we allow our students to just provide us with a bunch of feedback, give them autonomy, take ownership and things like that within reason. The idea of doing a lot of this still virtually, especially the one-on-ones, because some of our graduate students don't live on campus. Some of them are living in the East Bay or the South Bay. They're only coming to campus maybe once a week. And so allowing them, especially with these one-on-ones, to still do a one-on-one with someone virtually, because, you know, they can't come to campus and meet with someone in person. So I think there are some absolute opportunities that we would have probably missed or never done because of COVID. And so we will continue to do one-on-ones virtually and in person, whatever in person it might look like, as well as, and so that's like a really great thing that we'll do, and I'm excited for that. And then the other thing is the workshop piece. So like, we used to do workshops, our educators used to do workshops in person, but we'll also probably do both, like both in person and virtually. As for the campus rounds and that sort of thing, and I think time will tell. I think the density of all of our campuses are going to be much smaller, and so we're going to see smaller students and things like that. And so I don't know if we're going to see an increase of people smoking on campus or the perimeters of our campus. So that might not be something that at least our educators are going to continue to do along with their like job description, if you will. So, yeah.
I don't really have too much to add. That was a wonderful answer. I'll just second that, even though I think students are going to be really excited to be in person when we can be and do some of these more outreach events and butt pickup days and things like that, I would agree that I think almost more so it's just going to change the way that we do things. We're going to offer things virtually more often, but I'm excited to be able to kind of offer both so that the student has, is able to do what they prefer. I think some students are thrilled to be able to just open their laptop and meet one-on-one virtually, and other students really miss being face-to-face. So I think, yeah, I think that's kind of a silver lining that's going to come out of this. But as far as our peer educators, I know they're going to be really excited to like be out there giving out the swag and talking to students. But yeah, thank you for your answer, Natalie. That was, yeah, that's all I was going to add, is just kind of second all of that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I know it's so uncertain right now, and so hearing some ideas from folks is very appreciated. So I know we're getting into our last couple minutes here before we're going to be heading back to our closing session. And so I wanted to open the floor if anyone's got any more like burning questions. We have enough time for probably about one question more.
Can I ask a question to the people that are here? Just, I'm curious as to like where you all are on your peer program, or if your campus is tobacco or smoke free, just kind of just out of curiosity. In 4-year university, 2-year, like, you know, where are you all coming from?
Oh, I'm from Chabot College, and I did get it from the school to the parking lot. But now I'm getting it from the parking lot to the streets, and I'm having a hard time because I took it to the classified senate, academic senate.
Okay.
The health and safety passed it. They helped me. The student senate passed. It's getting into them 2 meetings to convince them. They want to know if they catch people smoking, what is campus safety going to do about it? Are they going to give them a ticket, or how are they going to handle it? So that's where I stand right now, as far as that. But I did get it halfway. I'm just waiting to get it to the other half.
Okay.
I'm at Feather River College, which is a 2-year community college. And we're hoping that next month it's gonna pass through I think they call it Academic Congress, to convert the campus into a tobacco-free campus. Previously, there's been, I would say, no cessation support or resources on campus.
That's exciting. You guys are almost there as well.
Yeah.
We have one in the chat that says Skyline Community College, and we're working on passing a policy which is likely to pass by April district-wide.
And just like one last thing I would add, like there are so many grant opportunities when it comes to tobacco cessation. I mean, we got one through the CVS, the Tobacco Free Generation, as well as some actually even university grants, like within your university, you know, so there's a lot out there for tobacco use. So I highly recommend just taking a stab at it. And even if it's $1,000, that can go a long, long way. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking into grants, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Finding funding is it's difficult sometimes, but there is a lot out there if you just do a little bit of searching and you write up some good proposals. And there's a lot of groups that really want to support it right now. So in our last minute, I want to again thank Natalie and Rand for being here and for speaking to us and sharing. I appreciate all of you who have come in and spoken to us as well and participated in this session.